like to bring the St. Helens Budget Committee in order. I'd like to start the meeting with public comments. Do we have anyone that would like to make public comments? Sure. Patrick, please come forward and state your name and your address. And let us know what's on your mind.
Hi, Patrick Berkeley, 254 South 14th Street. And being the nitpicky, I was just looking at Visitor and Tourism Fund, and there's a typo. Hollow, it was spelled Howlow, H-O-L-L-O-W. Where is that? Oh, under expenditures, down below under events. Halloween Town. Up above in the income or the resources, it's spelled correctly. And it's just my nerd teacher self catching that. Anyway, no, but I did come to just to talk a little bit more about the visitor and tourism, and I did come to the council meeting last night and spoke a little bit about some questions I had regarding city expenditures for services on some of the tourism related issues such as Halloween Town and currently going on the Festival of Fairies and other such things, about just, and I'm not sure this is in the purview of the Budget Committee per se, but I think since you are dealing with the budget, though, at least being aware of that it seems that it's unclear exactly if the expenditures that are listed here really reflect what the city expenditures are for these services, especially when you might take into account the use of public service employees for setting up and taking down some of these things. So my question to the council last night was just to see if there's some way to be able to look at that and somehow explicitly account for those kinds of expenditures, because I do know within the city already some employees work in various roles, and their money and services are funded through different in different departments and different things like that. So I just am asking that you keep that in mind as you're looking at the visitor and tourism funding tonight. And I, as a member of the public and in my conversations with others in the public, I do know that there are people who are wondering why city employees are putting up things like the Stonehenge monument for the Festival of Fairies when they might look around town and see that they, to them, are more obvious and needs and things that need to be taken care of. So again, it's just I think a matter of looking at that, helping me and helping our citizens just to be aware exactly how what revenues are being used for tourism and our promotion of these events, and exactly what are the real costs to the city for our support of these events.
Thank you, Patrick.
So Patrick, just one comment is a lot of things are complaint driven. So if our community, anybody out there sees things that aren't getting done, just a friendly note to the city and we'll try and get on them.
Yeah, and I appreciate that too. I appreciate that, but I think we all know too that, as we see by the attendance at budget committee meetings and council meetings, that doesn't always come. So,
right.
Yeah, but I appreciate that. Thanks.
Can we have a detailed list of how everything's spent?
Yeah, we're actually going to go through the Visitor and Tourism Fund tonight, and I'll touch on the General Fund Support Services charge that we charge in the Visitor Tourism Fund that helps pay for some of those administrative costs and public work costs. So we'll talk more about that tonight.
Patrick, stick around. Okay. Is there any other further comment? Okay. I'm going to hand this over to you, Matt, with the budget review and special revenues funds.
So tonight, just briefly reviewing the agenda, we're going to be looking over the special revenue funds and the general fund. After that, we'll have a short break and then some last discussion items from the opportunity list. whatever time frame we get into, I want to remind the Budget Committee that at 8:15, we have a scheduled public hearing. That is for the state revenue sharing that we have to receive revenue sharing from the state. So at 8:15, no matter where the discussion is or where we're at, we must stop and open a public hearing for that specific purpose. So just keep that in mind as we go through the timeline tonight, that we kind of have to get through everything by that 8:15 time frame. If there's no forward questions, I'll just kind of go ahead and jump into the special revenue funds. If that works for everyone.
Please continue.
Okay. So the special revenue funds are made up of 5 specific funds: the street fund, street SDC, community enhancement, visitor tourism, and community development. So we're going to briefly talk about each one and show you kind of a high-level look at each of these funds. This is the street fund. So we mainly get our street fund revenue from the motor vehicle tax as well as state grants, which are what we call STP funds. So those are specific projects that are reimbursed from STP funds that we do. A lot of our projects that we do in our streets are STP eligible. We have a little bit of a debt service that was just started in 2017 from the streetlight project that was done to replace all of our streetlights with more environmentally friendly and I lost my train of thought.
More efficient.
More
affordable.
Yes.
All the good reasons for.
Yes, all the good reasons to do
Better
this.
light
So,
and better cost.
the goal out of that is that the savings that we're going to save as far as an energy cost pay for basically the debt service payment. So it kind of almost evens out to a certain extent, and then over the life term of those lights and the project, we will come out ahead. So, some specific projects that we have outlined for next year are noted on there. The North Vernonia sidewalks, some Trenton road patching, some new signage for branding and wayfinding, as well as some general sidewalk improvements. So those are the main projects that Public Works has outlined in the capital improvement plan over this next year. Other than that, it kind of continues the same trend as I talked about the last budget meeting, where I'm budgeting a little bit higher in contingency amounts for all funds, just because of some of the issues we had this year with funds being unappropriated, and then we can't use them, and then something happens. We have to do some interfund loans, which we'll have to do this year for like the visitor tourism fund. So I'm budgeting a little bit more in contingency in all the funds, just to help me kind of build a little safe point. In case anything happens in the future for potential projects that may come up, or anything that happens in the next year. But this is the outline of the street fund. Are there any specific questions that either I can answer or Public Works can answer as far as projects?
Just, or not project, but why did the motor vehicle tax take such a big jump?
We're paying a lot more.
Yes, we
Yes,
are.
that was.
We're paying 112.
We get, so those estimates come directly from the League of Oregon Cities. They put out a publication each year that is kind of the state revenue estimates for revenue sharing, as well as the state motor vehicle tax. So based on what you're paying and population and everything, that is their estimate of what the city should receive this year.
We're
It
taxing
went up
electric cars
50%.
now.
Yes.
And if I may, a lot of that came out of that 2017 statewide transportation package. That was a big increase in revenue.
Correct.
One of my cars didn't go up at all, so it's not,
Lucky.
it's not
Well,
even.
And I do have a quick specific question. I see that the signage, the branding and wayfinding is now here in the street fund, whereas it seems like in prior years it was in the visitor and tourism fund. Am I reading this correctly?
Yeah,
I
that
didn't
was,
read it
so
right.
part of the visitor tourism fund. Sue, did you want to talk a little bit about that? Or, I saw your mic going, so.
Yeah, well, I can weigh in.
No, go ahead.
You probably know more about the funding for the master plan. This is for starting implementation, so actual erecting of the signs. Yeah, and the first was the planning, the master planning of it.
Great, thank you.
And I want to clarify, this isn't all the signs. We're going to start with one street and do all Also, our street, the actual name signs are out of compliance right now, and as we replace those, we're supposed to bring them up to current standards. So part of that funding that you see there, that's the signage, is for that, not all branding and wayfinding signage. Yeah.
Do they have to be bigger?
Yes. Larger letters and, yeah.
So it's my fault.
Okay, so we'll move on to Streets SDC, which is actually pretty simple. We don't have any projects on the schedule this next year that are SDC eligible, but we, as we do in all SDC funds, we appropriate to use all the funds just in case there are projects that come up that are SDC eligible, or we find certain projects that we could get done within the feasibility of all the tasks that Public Works has on their plate for next year. So I appropriate to spend all the funds, and I just kind of split it, so to speak, between professional services and capital outlay. And then the SDC charges are strictly from estimated development fees that are coming in. So much like the other SDCs, we appropriate to use everything. Any questions on Streets SDC? Okay. So we're going to move on to the Community Enhancement Fund, which is kind of a somewhat conglomerate of a bunch of special revenue items that kind of encapsulate the police department, the library department, the Arts and Cultural Commission, and the Youth Council now. So this is a summary page of all those departments. You can see on the bottom in the expenditures and materials and services, you see each department listed with their expenses. And then most of the revenue is from intergovernmental revenue. That is mainly a police grant that Terry has received and will probably continue to receive until those funds are spent. Terry, did you want to talk about that grant for maybe just a few minutes and fill people in on what it is for?
Sure. The grant that Matt's talking about is our CIT grant, or Crisis Intervention Team Program grant that we got from the Bureau of Justice Assistance. It was originally $300,000. That goes to pay for salary for our CIT coordinator and helps to facilitate that training. We were a little bit late. We're a lot late in terms of spending the money. The grant year technically expires this coming October. We're going to be asking for an extension on that. I would imagine we'll get 12 months in terms of an extension. We still have well over $100,000 available to us to spend, and we have a lot of work that we still want to do. So anyway, that's the CIT grant.
So the other source of revenue there is the transitional housing grants. That is money that we receive back from CAT that we give back to grants. So it's kind of an in and out for any transitional housing for the CAT program. So that's money that strictly comes in and then goes out. We're basically an intermediary between.
Does that mean the city's a pass-through agency for that?
Correct. So this is a more in-depth look at each department. Police department at the top, like Terry mentioned, is for the CIT grant and some employee salary and benefits, and then any kind of travel expenses according to the CIT grant that we get reimbursed for. The library department receives some smaller donation grants and donations to use, as well as any kind of library expenses that they use specifically for room rentals. Those fees are specifically kept into this fund so that the library can use them specifically. And then the Arts and Cultural Commission has their budget over on the right side that they've been working on for a little bit while. And then the transitional housing, like I mentioned, is basically a pass-through. And then the Youth Council is a new department that was created in this fund. It used to not be a fund, or it used to not be a department. I put it into the City Council department this year, and we're going to move it over to the Community Enhancement Fund. That way it is kept separate so that the Youth Council is aware that the money that they bring in is specifically for them to use. So it's easy to mark and track for the Youth Council. Are there any specific questions that I or staff can answer? next is the Visitor Tourism Fund. So as you can see, the main revenue for this fund is the motel hotel tax. You'll see that it jumped up from about 150 to 200,000 per year. That is predicted on the new amount that was approved a couple months ago, I think, by City Council, where it went from 7 to 10%. So that 200,000 is that showing that increase. The other miscellaneous revenue are the event-specific revenues that we receive from Halloween Town or sponsorships. And then we have the 220 that is the rollover balance from this current year. The expenses are outlined below. To go back on what Patrick was discussing earlier, the third line item down where you see the GFSS charge, that is General Fund Support Services charge. That is the administrative charge that is put onto the Visitor Tourism Fund to help pay for the administrative costs and setup that Public Works do. Legislatively, we are restricted on how much we can take. I believe that limit is 30%.
30% on the new.
Oh,
the
okay,
new amount,
30% on the new amount. So, what the city council had approved in the past is a 10% admin fee on the motel hotel tax. So that is where I estimated the $14,000 for this year that we could charge the Visitor Tourism Fund. And then the increase to the 19 was the increase of the 30% of the increase. So that 50%, that $50,000 increase that we see into this year, I took 30% of that and added that into the GFSS charge, which is $5,000. So that's how we get to the $19,000. And like I said, that pays for all the supposed to pay for most of or all of the Public Works staff that helps set up or take down events, as well as administrative costs from John or Crystal or other staff that help out throughout the year for putting on events.
So that's what we're allowed to take back out of the tourism fund, but do you have any idea what the actual costs are?
Last year was the first time we talked about tracking that, and we talked about it kind of at the end of Halloween time, when city council was kind of questioning, curious about how many hours do we actually spend. The city council could have a discussion if they want to actually keep track of that. We can definitely do that through time cards. It would be kind of a manual process, because we manually enter time cards right now. So it would be a little bit of a manual process, but something that staff could do.
The other
Just
thing,
stuff to replace too, right? Like, not only hours, but there's a lot of damage that happens too.
I don't know that there's a lot of damage.
Oh, okay.
It's an interesting conversation, yeah. There's a whole lot of legislation around this issue about expenditures out of tourism fund that can be used to pay staff factors.
Change the rules, I understand.
Yep.
well, the one thing just that maybe people that haven't been around and haven't watched the tourism fund as much, but I've helped a lot with events, but I don't do stuff with Public Works. But a couple times I'm like, how come this isn't out here? And they're going, there's a water main issue. So nothing gets put up. Our customers, our ratepayers, our taxpayers, our citizens come first. And so sometimes, it waits until they have time. And so the citizens of our community don't wait for Halloween. Halloween waits for the citizens. So, there was times when Christmas lights have been a week late going up because there was a windstorm, and that takes precedent over other things. And our Public Works crew is always gonna respond to our citizens first. Nobody's taking back seat to a decoration. Because I've been down here, I'm not with you, so I don't know what's going on, but I've seen the decorations be lagged in putting up. And I'm like, what happened? And they're like, this happened, and they have to do the most important job first. I've been on the receiving end. And just because the water main doesn't break on your street doesn't mean it doesn't break somewhere else and they go take care of someone else.
I think this mostly falls on the shoulders of Public Works, in terms of what Patrick is questioning, how much time, whatever. And I've always thought and brought to the council at one time the whole idea of decapping your day. And where I work
we had to quantify everything we did. We had to charge to, what we were working on. And so we had to break down. It was not easy. As an employee, it was not easy for you, and it was time consuming. And so this is one thing you need to understand, that this may be useful, but it's also very time consuming, and this itself is going to cost you.
What software package are we using for payroll today, and what is the process?
I was actually gonna mention, on Doug's point, that the tracking part, when we go to a new financial software, the new financial software that we have will be electronic timekeeping, so it will be easier for staff, in theory, to enter their specific hours in departments, to more easily track that automatically.
I think I use something similar where we're able to track the specific, what we need to put our hours towards.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, and quite honestly, it's pretty easy to keep track of, so.
And the way it's being done now is that it's just amount of time they're at work.
Correct.
Is that correct? Before we leave that, I'd like to comment on the main revenues. The main revenue, I wouldn't say it's the main revenue, but it's the public perception of the main revenue is that it's hotel tax. And hotel tax, if we rewind back to 2012, it's about 80,000-ish. So over the course of we've almost doubled that in 5 years here. And not only the increase in the rate is going to bolster this revenue on that line item, but the expansion of this Airbnb campaign that will have more local revenues. And the problem with Halloween, and it shows good growth, and I mean a tremendous growth, frankly, in the fund, but there's a limited capacity. So all these people that come to stay are turned around and they're driving back to Portland. They're staying in these hotels, and we don't see any of that revenue. So
Because we max everything out.
everything's just you reach a saturation point, right? So to do what we can with the resources we have, we're doing this active Airbnb campaign and trying to get people to stay and setting up the tax. And also, that's campground development we've been talking about would be eligible for that, and those revenues would funnel into this source as well. So.
I can also think of 5 people here that put a lot of extra time in that don't get paid for it. Will you guys all have to code your time too? Seriously, because you are all putting in time. I know every one of you people are working extra time, and you're not getting reimbursed for that extra time.
Interesting, so just so you know, I own my own business, everybody. My worst year was 60,000. Last year I did 35. So yeah, it takes some time.
Well, and I think it's important when time tracking comes on with the new software package, like with that module, I do think it's important that council and volunteers track those hours, because it's an in-kind donation to the city, and that quantity needs to be captured and can also be leveraged for grants and that type of thing. So.
Well, and the other thing too is that when volunteers do volunteer, sometimes when they claim those hours for working for a nonprofit, it actually allows you to collect a donation from that company as well.
Yeah, I know Intel's a big proponent
Yep,
of that.
they are.
The other thing I do want to quickly mention too, you'll see in the 17-18 budget in the revenues is a $240,000 transfer. That is the interfund loan that the general fund is giving the visitor tourism fund to help it kind of stay on track. Because when we passed the budget originally for 17-18, we put $212,000, you can see in the unappropriated fund balance. I legally can't use those funds unless there's a natural disaster and I get an okay from the governor type of thing. So to keep this fund going, I need to do an interfund transfer of that $240,000. So you see that in the revenues in 2017-18, and then in 18-19, you can see it budgeted to go back into the general fund in 18-19. So I just want to make that clear. Any other questions on visitor or tourism fund? Okay. So we'll move along to the Community Development Fund, which encompasses a few main departments. The Economic Planning, Boise White Paper Property, Boise Veneer Property, and the Forestry Department. Some of the main revenue line items are property tax reimbursement that we receive, and then lease payments, as well as a potential grants that equal up to about $1.8 million and he's gonna kind of fill you in on these departments and what they have going on this next year.
So this is the community development, not the planning department and the building department. This is more of the economic piece of it and the component and the special revenues. And the grants that we're seeking are for, there's three. One of them is for the design of the boardwalk. We're looking at the next big catalytic piece of the waterfront development project being a boardwalk design. And then the continuing exploration of the lagoon is another piece, and then some trail development. Those three grants total about 1.8 million collectively.
And you feel confident enough to put this in as revenue?
Well, we often put it as a placeholder, and we obviously clearly don't move forward without a notice to proceed, and it's kind of a, again, establishing that expenditure authority, and there's a balance there of things that are speculative, and we have pretty good feelings about these grants. So,
Yeah.
makes-
Hope so.
Yeah.
What was the third one you said?
They're coming
Trail
from a variety of sources. Well, some Business Oregon has a number of programs that we're applying to. The Regional Trails program through the state is one of the programs. Infrastructure Finance Authority, Regional Investment Fund is one of them. VQ is another one.
So just a couple quick things to note. This year, the Community Development Fund is repaying the enterprise funds $350,000 from a loan that was made in 2014. It was a 5-year interfund loan. So that will be being paid back to the enterprise funds this year. And they still will have a remaining one of $600,000 that was started in 2017, this last year.
Another question.
Yeah.
Forestry, I see there's timber harvest revenue happening.
Yes.
Is this the first, where are we at on our forestry plan?
You want to talk about
So
that,
we
John?
have a 2,400 acre property that we are striving to obtain a sustainable yield rotation, and that there's been peaks over the years where it's been more aggressively cut and times when it's been left alone. And right now timber's at a 20-year high, so we're capitalizing on that and doing a 50-acre cut, which is about gets us to that 20-year. I mean, two or 3 years ago, we did a cut of the oldest growth we had, which was about 70-year-old timber, which is almost oversized for the market, and it's a declining value. The markets are more geared around here towards smaller logs, and you get better price and more revenue for that. So,
Is that the property over on Sykes?
No, it's Salmonberry.
Salmonberry.
Oh, okay.
Watershed.
Watershed property.
Thank you.
You can't sell this for export either.
And we can't sell for export, so I get that. It was, I think our last cut was about $500 a board foot, and the estimates were $725 now, so that's considerable. So.
The year we built the new water treatment facility, we harvested quite a bit that year. Luckily, the prices were good, but we took a good chunk out to help pay for that.
And through the recession years.
Doesn't all of that funds have to go back to public works?
The-
Salmonberry revenue?
No.
No.
The forestry department used to be held in the water fund, and that was moved 3 years ago?
Might even been 4 years ago.
It was moved to this economic development fund.
I was curious, because we helped set up the original plan for Salmonberry back when Dave Winship was still city engineer. Just curious to see how that progressed. At that time, you were in a sweetheart contract with the Crown Zeller back, and they got 2/3 and you got 1/3, and out of that third that you got, you had to pay for all road building and tree planting. It was a couple of years when the timber harvest, when the timber prices were low enough so that it actually cost the city money.
Oh, my gosh.
And so, and not only that, but we had our own forester look at that land, do a site review. We discovered that you had a lot more timber than what Crown said you had.
Imagine
So
that.
that was when we decided that you and Crown were gonna part ways, and we were gonna get your private forester to manage your secondary watershed.
Well, if there are no further
What year was that,
questions,
Bill?
What's that?
What year was that?
I don't know, when was Dave Winship city engineer? No, that's. It was right pre-Escobel. It was in the nineties, I think.
okay. Well, we need to move along to the budget review and general fund.
Yep. Any other last minute questions on the community development fund?
Continue.
Okay. So the general fund is home to a plethora of departments, as you can see. I'm going to go over the general fund revenue, and then we'll kind of go over the departments as a whole. So on the general fund revenue, these are the estimated revenues for the upcoming year. Property taxes, intergovernmental revenue, which is mainly the revenue sharing that we have the public hearing for. That involves the cigarette tax, alcohol, and revenue sharing. The intergovernmental revenue you see jumped up, that is the school's contribution to the additional school resource officer, assuming that it passes their budget as well. And then the grants that are noted here, you see the $30,000 for parks. Normally I budget $5,000 just for each of those. It jumped up to 30 because the city went for and did receive a $25,000 grant for the recreation program. We did receive word that we did receive that grant. So we expect to receive that fairly shortly. And then the charges for services are pretty self-explanatory. The park and rec user fee, that $65,000 is assuming the $2 proposed user fee that would begin in January. So that's the half year of that $2 fee. The in lieu of franchise fees are basically the franchise fees that the general fund charges the water and sewer and storm accounts. And then you have the general fund support services, which is all the administrative costs to run the enterprise funds. That would mainly be stuff like utility billing. All of the staff and the utility billing clerks are paid out of, or paid for from that general fund support services, as well as a percentage of almost every department in the general fund pays a percentage of that from the enterprise. And then the franchise taxes from places like Comcast and the PUD. The other revenues are pretty self-explanatory unless you have any questions specifically on the revenue. I hate to go kind of line by line, but.
The fines are from the court system?
Yeah, so the fines for the library and then the fines specifically are for the court department. Those are budgeted at $250, which is roughly the budget for this current year.
So can I ask you said you added in the $2 user fee to go on that?
Yes.
So how did the survey ever come out? How did that?
Actually, the survey is still going on. It's still open. We've actually received, I checked it today about 3:30. We had 443 respondents, which is very good. No, it's an excellent sample size, so to speak.
Yeah.
I can quickly pull that up.
Yeah. Love to see.
So 443 respondents. Hard to see from this angle.
It is a little hard, isn't it?
Page down.
That's how the question was worded, would you?
There we go. So the first question is, would you support a rec program? You can see the vast majority do support a rec program. On average, how many hours does your household spend on leisure activities? You can see 3 to 5 and 6 to 10 were the vast majority.
Wow.
Which of the following leisure activities does your household participate in regularly? Eating out, outdoor parks, and sports. And then please select any organized recreation programs that you and your family members are involved in the community. School events was the number one answer, and then youth sport leagues and library programs were the top 3. Congratulations, Margaret. I think that just dotes on the good work that Margaret and her staff do. So please select up to 5 programs that are the most important to you. Summer recreational programs, obviously the highest, and then a menagerie of options between youth sports, rec classes, adult fitness classes, and summer sports. Citywide special events.
Wow. Nice grouping.
So this really helps give myself and Shauna, who's our utility billing clerk right now, who's been working with me to kind of help build the program, and she's kind of taken the leadership role of trying to get out in the community, connect with businesses to create programs and classes and everything. So she's done a great job thus far. And then the final question of how much would you be willing to pay for a rec program? You can see roughly, 70% or so between the $5 or greater than $5 that would be willing to pay to support a program.
Sorry, that's 40. What are the 2 percentages added together? 2 top?
38 and 34, so 82.
Wow.
72.
72,
Well,
yeah.
Well, still wow.
And then add the $3 one, is that, yeah, $3 per month, add that to that deal. So what?
$3 a month. would
Takes
be
it about 80%.
80%.
Yeah,
80% are willing to pay $3.
Now, I do want to mention about the survey.
Yeah.
You mentioned that it went to the schools and it brought the thing, information home to parents.
Yes, so it's gone out.
And I asked people in my neighborhood,
Yeah.
and nobody knew anything about this survey. So there's an awful lot of people, if you don't have kids, you don't know anything about this. So this is it's a good scientific survey if you're looking at schools, but it's not a survey it's not a scientific survey.
So
for
the survey
population
did
of
also
St.
go
Helens.
out in the newsletter, as well as it went out on the last utility billing bill. There was a note on the utility billing bill about the survey. Please go on and take it. Other than that, unless you
Only look at one number on the utility bill.
other than
Yeah.
asking people who we know that would be willing to share, whether that be on Facebook or social media of some sort. I understand what you're saying, and I do in a sense agree with you that it can be a fine scope of the demographic that we're looking at. But as far as a general population, to get over 400 people out of 13,000,
Right, but the respondents is skewed to those that will use it,
It was in the newspaper,
you
right?
know?
Yeah.
yes, it was.
It's skewed to those that will use it.
Can you take it?
It was in the newspaper.
A little comment is that I even knew about this, about the survey going out. I thought it was gonna be a survey that you fill out something and send it in. I never saw it on my bill. I paid my bill and never saw it. I mean, it doesn't, I looked at my bill and checked things and I never saw anything on the bill for a survey.
Here we have 2 different agencies, the city and the school district, both very big, that are trying to push this out to the best of our ability, and we find this happens quite a bit as a council too. When people say, what is going on? And we've done all this outreach, and they
Well,
show up at
like I
the
say,
last
I never saw it on the bill.
Well, there's a
If you put a
percentage of-
survey, if you put a piece of, what I thought you were gonna do is put a piece of paper in there, somebody would fill out. You know, you could have easily just stuck it in the bill, people wouldn't see it. Now, I don't know, nobody,
People on fixed incomes are underrepresented on this bill. On this survey, people with fixed incomes are less likely to have internet, less likely to have done something online, and they've not seen this.
But they have kids.
I don't know that a lot of fixed income people don't have access to a computer or a cell phone.
I'm just saying there's a demographic that's not represented here.
And I think the only way to get to that is scrap what we're doing on terms of a monthly fee for $3 or $5 or $2. We could quibble about that for a long, long time. What's going to be? I do think that we should go for a special levy, 1, or 2, a special district. And I think now's the time. Matter of fact, the letter states that the Eisenschmidt pool with the Greater St. Helens Parks and Rec is in for a name change.
But that
They are
doesn't, they're still a special district, and we would have to have them expand their district, which would be a process.
I don't think you're getting what I'm saying. I'm saying make our own district. And that could be called the not greater, but the St. Helens Parks and Recreation District. And as they move out and retain a name of Eisenschmidt Pool or whatever their name is going to be, but Andrew Nemi drafted a letter, and from the results of their board, they're going to change their name. And along with that, you know, we'll probably work with a parks deal with them, with Civic Pride Park, hopefully allowing them to expand if they want to. So I see that as all a win-win kind of thing. And here we're quibbling about $2, $3, $4, what's going on with, you know, how are we going to do it? Was it a fair kind of thing? I just think that if we take it to the voters, then we'll know. We'll know if it's a special levy, or we'll know if we want to initiate a special taxing district. We'll know. Not only that, we're just asking our people off the city of what the use of the parks would be. Why don't we ask the people in the school district, which allows many more people? I mean, and those are the individuals who will be using our parks, not just our city. Why do our city people have to pay for people who live outside the city?
And
Why is that?
And we are talking about a special district, and I think having a special district is a great idea. This gets us started a little ahead of that, and then we can move into the special district.
That's my point.
Okay, can we keep
That's
on
my.
point?
That's exactly my point.
Okay, I missed that.
You want to do this, the $2 and.
You can quibble about that all you want, yeah, and then we'll have to reject that, right? That's
No, we
good,
wouldn't reject it, we would reverse it when the special
There's a
district.
question.
that's reverse it, reject it, reverse, whatever.
We have a chair.
Yes.
Sure.
Question.
Quick question, was our current volunteer parks commission part of the design of the survey?
This is not the city.
No, this is not Parks and Commission, the Parks and,
Well, correct, but like our city parks
This survey was geared
volunteer.
strictly towards recreation activities and not directly at parks. What we've been creating is a separate recreation program,
Yes, I
separate
understand.
of parks. Now, whether those two meld together in the future or how that develops, that's up to the city.
just one last thing, we did talk about, we're having a public hearing on this, the water bill too, the outreach, so we'll find out what kind of support at that.
Yep.
It's a little worrisome only because now it's like we have 2 new taxes coming up for the same thing. Right? So right now, because we're kind of saying, oh, we'd like to push this forward on the bill, but then we're also saying we want a special district. So we're basically right now asking for 2 new taxes.
But we don't know
right?
about-
Because it's a special district.
But there would be
We're
only
only, we're
I'm
only,
not asking
we're
for
only,
that,
we're only addressing
I'm not
that
asking
issue.
for that this year in this budget.
That will be in the future.
I'm just saying, you know, that could be the direction that the city council takes. And in the meantime, we can quibble about, you know, how much we're,
Nina, to your point, if we created that district, the $3 would come off the
Okay.
water bill.
That would be somehow in
Yeah.
this way.
Yeah.
Then they understand, okay, we're
Yeah.
going to do it this way. Because
Yeah.
I do understand what you're saying. Why should just the city pay?
This
I mean,
or
it's
that,
always
not
the
this
people
and
that
that.
use it and the more people that are paying it, the
Right.
better it is. I
And the
agree
people
with
that have
that.
been meeting with
But
Parks
that's the
and Rec,
longer
which are-
term.
Which are Chris
Okay, that's not
Unicom,
gonna
that
come for years.
have talked
Well,
about
it could-
where
it could.
people outside the city limits could
But it can't
actually,
happen immediately.
to, correct me if I'm wrong, but we've also talked about people could, become part of the Parks and Rec that are outside the city, for a certain, like, agency.
Use school district boundaries.
Right.
School district
Or-
boundaries make so much sense.
Or give
It's a
city
wider-
city
Yes.
people within the city limits
A break on it
a lesser fee
Yes.
for classes and things
for
like that.
classes that do happen. Because we don't control that part of it. We're just putting it together, right?
Right,
The classes are gonna be offered by certain,
right.
Individuals.
Because we
martial
kind of made
arts
the pile
or-
bigger. It was for, maintenance on the parks. That's what the original thing was. And now it's,
No,
we're
no,
adding
no,
the
no, no, no.
library.
No,
and
not
we're
this.
adding-
no, it was kind of
Is
a little
that
bit of,
kinda all
a
together?
little bit of
No.
that would be, probably could go towards that because the ball fields are gonna be used for Parks and Rec.
We're kind of
legitimately.
putting those plans together. Do I understand that? Because a lot of this will go towards
Yes,
maintaining.
and the library is also part of the rec program too, because they're
Yeah.
gonna be here,
Yeah.
so that staff.
We're
person
incorporating-
Oh,
that-
that's part of what happened with the new rec director. That's part of what.
We're
I don't-
incorporating recreation programs for the school district and for the city and using facilities of both.
And maintaining both.
I don't know where we're going with this, but a lot of the pushback that I'm getting when I talk to people in my neighborhood or people around the city is that you aren't messing with my water bill. It's high enough the way it is. Don't mess with it. So I get that. I understand that. And so the water bill has bad connotation at this point right now. So we might want to think about how we name this and what we're doing, but tacking it on to a water bill, the water bill is like, I think everyone in this room knows that it's a eyesore and a pain for a lot of people to try to pay that bill.
And Councilman Morton, I think it's also a matter of the language, right? It is not a water bill, it is a utility bill.
Exactly.
It is for all of your city services.
Exactly.
The less we can say water bill and the more we can say utility bill, I think the more inclusive.
Right.
Just to shift people's thinking, right?
So even a public meeting would help. You said you already have one planned. Even that's gonna help know how many people
Or
are
we,
just feeling
we,
like.
we discussed that here last meeting.
Yeah.
Part of the process.
Yes.
Is there a date?
So starting to.
And just to remind you, the user fee on there is anticipating the June start date, so that still gives us plenty of time, 6-7 months to plan that public meeting, do that outreach.
Right.
And then.
You mean June or July?
January.
I'm January resident, January.
He said, I knew he meant January.
Yeah, I did too, I
Not
said
next
July.
month. I was thinking next year.
Communication planning under that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and potable water is.
Yeah.
Any other questions on the general fund revenue items?
Is there anything else that we should be discussing, guys? Keep your side comments to yourselves.
What I said, there's a lot of times that you can.
Can we move on? We're moving on.
I'm gonna move on to the expense side of the general fund. This is a general overview of each department, where personnel services are on top, materials and services are on bottom. And then the remaining, outside department stuff, which is just a contingency and unappropriated fund balance are on the far right. Just a kind of couple quick notes comparing this year's budget to this next year's budget to this current year's budget. There was an 11% increase in personnel services, only a 3% increase in materials and services. And of that 3%, 2% of that is the new recreation department that is budgeted as its own department. So overall, the general fund had an increase of expenses of 8%, but that, as you can see, is mainly personnel services, which are COLA, unions, COLAs, adjustments, and salaries and benefits, retirement, PERS, so those kind of things.
That's not a full-time employee,
No, it's not.
Just
It's a part-time employee.
part-time employee.
Yes. Yeah. In my general fund 5-year forecast, I anticipated a part-time employee starting out as a 0.5, and then as the program grows, it would be increased as the program grows.
And did that include, I'm sorry, 'cause I can't see from here, but that included, we had talked about like the library person to add in a part-time and at
Yes,
least.
this is
that
With all
included
the,
those
all the
things
increase,
also.
all the opportunities that we decided to budget for these. If you would like, I can go department by department and show you the line item detail, if you would like. Otherwise, you can see kind of all the general numbers there, but whatever the budget committee would like to do, I'm happy to continue with each department if you would like.
So Department 708 for Parks
Yeah, the Parks Department?
and Department 709? Those were the two additions that we added?
Yeah, so the Parks Department is,
That's always been that way, right? I mean, you add a little bit more to it.
yeah, we added a tiny bit more professional services, not a huge amount. The main brunt of it goes into the recreation department, because it's only going, because that fee is only gonna go in half year, we don't have a whole lot of money to play with. And then the grant helps pay for, a large portion of this fund as well. So this is for part-time wages, and then, the main cost is printing and postage of the program, as we kind of get started to kind of figure things out. There'll be some initial costs that we'll use the grant funds for, any kind of program games or stuff that we need to buy, to kind of get the program started. But I would anticipate if the user fee goes on to, in some way, that the parks budget would be increased as far as maintenance. Part of that, when it fully gets implemented, that part of those funds would be used as park maintenance.
How many FTEs are this Parks Department, the 708?
708 is, I think, 1.4, Susan?
1.6 for just the regular, everyday, all year employees. And then we do have 0.4 for 4 quarter time employees.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
It's interesting.
Right. Time tracking will help.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Does anybody have any other questions?
I do a question on 705 police. I know last year that you had a hard time getting, filling your amount of people you needed. Is the increase because you filled some of those positions?
All of our positions are currently filled. Yay. That's it's been a long time since we've been there, but I think what we're reflecting here, yeah, knock harder. What we're reflecting is is this the additional school resource officer, Matt? Yeah. So we're working with the school district to add a second school resource officer to the district. I'm not sure where they're at. They had a meeting like this last night, and I'm not sure where they landed, but I heard some very positive things from superintendent about those discussions. So if the district comes through with their part to match our part, then we'll add an extra officer in July.
In the personnel services, most of the increases you see are in health and dental benefits and retirements, are one of the main increases for obvious reasons. And then plus the additional SRO officers. Any other questions on the general fund or anything in general? After this, we've kind of gone through all of the funds. So if there's any other general questions, I'm happy to answer, or staff can answer if you have any department-specific questions. Now's the time to ask.
Anybody? Or shall we move to break for 10 minutes? Okay, break for 10 minutes. Be back at 7:10.
20 minutes ahead of time. Holy crap.
Are we okay with that?
Yeah.
Good,
Yeah.
because I think we're gonna need extra time on the next thing. Sorry, I'm being kind of selfish. I wanted to kind of,
What are you talking about?
number 15 and number 16.
I don't know what this is even about. We haven't even talked about that.
I know. So we're gonna have Matthew put that up on the board.
And I don't think this council should even talk about these two things, or these three things.
They want budget for facilities management, and it was on the budget to be discussed.
I know. But we didn't talk about that as a council when that list came out.
Why didn't you guys approve it for us to talk about them on the budget committee?
We didn't.
Then how did it come out to us? Well,
You just put it on there.
okay, so we're discussing it.
I mean, we got, what, 4 people here? Or 3 new people on the budget committee. But even anybody on the budget committee doesn't have a real understanding of these things.
Could explain them. You got 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's not there.
I know kind of what his mindset was early on. Not blaming him.
If I want to talk about something in 5 minutes, it's going to be why we're giving away.
I know.
But that's why
Oh, you got him.
Why are we giving away an excavator for 30 grand? And why didn't you bring it up like 10 minutes ago when we were talking about the general budget? Why didn't you bring it up?
We voted on buying the new excavator last night. I voted against it.
Oh.
I've talked about it enough.
Oh.
So we have city employees who obviously, I mean, and understandably, they want good equipment. And I understand that. And they should have good equipment. Shouldn't break down because they've got time. But right now, we happen to own a paper mill that is out of the norm of most cities.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of need for a excavator over there,
Yeah.
especially with a hammer on it, a rock hammer on it.
Yeah. So are we getting one?
No, they're buying a new one, and we're selling our old one at a very reduced price.
Why don't we just keep it and then we'll have 2?
We should, but our public employees say it's not working because they only like new equipment.
It's a backup.
I know. That's my thing is who cares if it breaks down and it's
We own it.
Doesn't matter.
We own it.
I know. Well, they're saying they need the 30,000 that they're getting for trade-ins. It's bullshit. It's like a drop in the bucket.
Oh, it's a 30,000 trade-in? Why aren't we
Yeah.
selling it open market? Oh my God, that's a fool's game.
I know. They're going to turn around and sell it for 60 or 70,000.
That's right. You'd better off at a public auction. Didn't we just say we were gonna?
If we got a use for it, it's better off using it for a use for it because what we'd be doing is using it on the mill side to create a better land to sell.
So I have the same discussion with my wife. I got a car. We paid $25,000. Okay. We got kids that are gonna be using it, and
there's still good life in it.
There's still good life in it, right? And she goes, well, that car's, she says that car's not worth $25,000 anymore. And I go, do you agree with that? Okay.
Well, I don't know, I haven't seen the car, but, I mean, if it's used, it probably isn't.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
It is, the value of the car is not $25,000, but she wants me to turn around and buy another $25,000 car. How much is that car worth to me? $25,000.
That's right.
Because I don't have to replace something
exactly.
that I already have.
You're not gonna buy a new one, yeah.
I'm just saying, it's too bad that I'm not on the council either. I'm sorry. It's just the way the cookie crumbles, I guess.
Yep.
I wish there was, I'm not optimistic. I'm in the minority.
I don't know.
I'm smacking.
I don't know if the existing city council is ready for the next movement of changes that we need to do to grow the city. If they're going to keep on thinking like this.
Well, I mean, the rest of the council, they don't know.
That's what I don't
You know.
understand.
Did you say anything
Yeah, a bunch of them, yeah.
at the meeting, publicly?
At the last meeting, no, not last, because I've already talked about it enough. I'm done talking about it.
First meeting, we'll try and replace that.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about writing all this shit down and talking about it at my last meeting.
Directly, more directly.
Well, then again, you don't want to write a letter like Jeff Dickerson, do you? Oh my God.
Oh, yeah?
I didn't see his.
Oh, really?
Was that in the paper?
It was online.
Oh, online?
Yeah.
I'll have to go check it out.
Yeah, read between the lines. It's basically, this place is fucked up, this place is screwed up, I don't have anything more to do with you, you guys got your own mess, you know, you deal with your own. That's what it basically, without saying that. You know, I've written resignation letters before, the same freaking language. Same language. The worst thing that anyone can say will be, there's a special heart, there's a special place in my heart for this organization to continue and thrive, which is pretty much code for, I just hope that it just burns like the fires of hell and just goes down with the boat. Are we on mic? Are we on? No.
I don't know.
Especially if you're saying I couldn't do it either.
I don't care.
Yeah. Somebody said, Brian said that if you run, you might get it, but then you won't be reelected. And I go, that's not the campaign that I'm running.
They were getting into
I'm kind of wrestling still with a couple ideas. The devil you know, and then be the devil.
They still have a business director. Is that the, no, that's not them, that's the local place.
It may be just an anti vote for me. I think that would probably cinch me. You know, make St. Helens great again.
I wish that
Make St. Helens greater parks again.
That would be my ideal goal.
I don't know, just goofy. We're almost ready.
Yeah, well, we have two.
Are you prepared to put up how these were proposed for the budget committee on the board?
Sometimes we have grants available.
With all the language?
Like I said.
So we can look at them?
Oh, yeah, I can.
Okay, good.
Yeah, not a problem.
Because I just got it again. It's on here. Okay.
The city was applying a Main Street person to a while, but that they didn't, wasn't what he did last year. And that person was doing staff work. A lot of it running around. So that was probably the Main Street person we were talking to.
Break is over.
So they just have a Main Street for a lot of person. Yeah. The chair. I don't know, they had it for 4 or 5 years in a row, and it was determined that they needed to kind of share the wealth with other communities. They're only allowed to buy one cash. You can't, it's not guaranteed to continue to buy every time, and they look at everybody that throughout the state.
You've got it for 4 years.
Yeah.
Where are we going? Alright, so this is where the
Can I
cut
just
comes
make a
out,
motion to
magic
skip
tricks.
No.
section 5?
So the next item up on the agenda is to review and discuss the remaining opportunity items on the list. Before we get started though, I do want to point out publicly and say thank you to Terry Moss, who is retiring. His announcement, if you have not seen it in the paper or heard at city council meetings, that he is retiring from the city of St. Helens.
So how much do we put in the budget for his party?
Terry, this is your last
Budget.
You gonna give me a big wish list or a chance to give you my wish list or
No.
one last hurrah?
You can share a few words of
You have a
wisdom
wish
if you'd like.
Words of wisdom. I don't have any words of wisdom. Just my sincere expression of thanks. And I've the council has heard it from me a time or two, but our budget committee members, especially our new ones, who I have not had a chance to really spend a lot of time with. I just want to say thanks. This is a big deal to us, all of us as department heads, and it means a lot. So the work that you do and preparing our budget and letting us get through the budget year, it's a big deal. I don't know that it gets enough credit, the work that the budget committee does, so thank you. That's all I got, Matt. You looked at me like I had something else.
I must say, your wish list, though, I mean, I even talked to, ex-Chief Salee about the police station and how old it is. I don't know if anybody's ever been inside there. It's a very, very small, outdated police station. And, Terry's talked a few times, but then he just keeps backs off because he knows it's on the budget. But we definitely need to
Well, that's a big deal. The modern police facility is expensive. And what you guys are talking about tonight is really only the beginning of a long project. This it's gonna take a lot of time, it's gonna take a lot of money. But building something that really is for the future of this community and our police department is worthy of, taking our time and getting it right. I would, we could rush into something and build something that's not thinking long-term. It's good for the next 5 or 10 years, but I really think that thinking the next 30, 40, 50 years is appropriate.
So can I share a little bit of the dream?
It's what?
Can I share a little bit of the dream?
Dream away.
Okay. Well, because I know we've talked a little bit about it, was that little square, that's the secret sunken hole right by the feed store, the 2 ways? Having a nice brick building there with parking garage, and having possibly the city hall there, and the police department, and a nice state-of-the-art building. Can you imagine what that would look like, and that being a focal point?
That's where the old Italian import building used to stand.
Yes.
Yeah. Could you imagine? It would cost a lot of money, but could you imagine what that would do to this town?
But that's part of this research that Matt's put into the budget is really having some expert eyes take a look at, what our long-term needs are for the future. The building that we're in now is one that was built in, best I can tell, 1969, so almost 50 years ago, for a staff of 50 years ago. And we have slowly, incrementally, just squeezed our way into that space. So
The police officers and women have to knock because we're not sure what genders in the changing room.
and we have one room, yeah. There's a lot that we could spend a lot of time talking about our needs, but anybody that wants to come by and take a look or walk through and see what it looks like.
It'll only take a minute.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's not a 10-cent tour; it's a 5-cent tour.
Nickel tour, well spent.
Chief Moss, is it available
We have well, several years ago, we had this discussion, and there was a lot of us that went around and we toured some newer facilities and talked about what it would look like and what we needed. And the list was long, is long. But anyway, that'd be a fun project. There's going back to my departure. There's a lot of things that I'm really proud of that we've been able to do at the police department over the last 5 years as your chief. But this is one thing, a police facility that I'm not going to get to check off my list, but it'll be there, kind of stuck in my craw that I wish I could have. So anyway, it is a big deal. Like I said, I think that it doesn't get overstated that how important your input and your work is. So anyway, thanks.
Stick around.
Bring in as a consultant.
Yeah, a consulting fee, all right?
Okay, can we continue? Awesome.
So, the first item on the list is original number 5, which was sick leave payout for future employees. Just to remind you, this was the write-up that you saw at the informational meeting and during our first budget meeting. The city currently has a benefit for employees that when you retire from the city will pay out your sick time into a VIVA account that can be used for health expenses during your retirement. City has a lot of senior employees that could potentially retire within the next 4 or 5 years. You can see, I counted up to 15 employees in the next 4 years that could potentially retire, which could mean if they retired with the amount of sick leave time that could be available to them, that could potentially mean a payout of over $600,000 from the various funds, general fund, enterprise funds, depends on what you call it.
Well, it'd take over half your contingency fund.
Yes. If it was to be all paid out of general fund. Some of the employees are public works employees, so it would be split out between the water and sewer and all those kind of funds. This is a great benefit to those who understand it when they are employees, and if somebody is looking to come into the city as an employee, it is a benefit that I think should be pointed out because it is a great benefit that not many cities offer. But on the flip side, it is a financial commitment from the city if that employee does stay and retire, so to speak. So it is on the opportunity list for discussion if the city or if the budget committee would like to suggest to the city council to relook at this benefit for future employees. I'm definitely not recommending any changes to current employees for obvious reasons, but for any future employees hired on a certain date afterwards, it would be potentially a different benefit if they choose to go that way, whether that be limiting the number of sick leave hours that could be paid out to VIVA or limiting the benefit altogether.
Is there a compromise that you could do? Like, because this doesn't really support, a life balance. It's a lot of companies, what they will do is they will say, you have X number of personal time off days that you can use, but you have to use them within the year or they expire. And then they have some that will continue on and then roll over. But that eventually caps out at a certain number so that you don't want to, it's a liability is what it is. And most companies don't want that on their books rolling forward. It's not really, it's nice. I get your point that I would love to have something like that, but, for a business, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to have that type of benefit that doesn't promote good work balance. People should be taking time off. They shouldn't be, I'm just not going to take any vacation time. If I'm sick, I'm sick, and I'm not going to take a day off.
But this is sick time though, right?
This is specifically for sick time, not vacation.
And I think many private companies have a 2 or 3 year accumulation, and then it stops.
Correct.
Rather than
Yeah.
stopping at 1 year, it stops after 3. If someone gets desperately sick, then there's always a campaign for others to donate their sick leave. So if there are options like that available, I see that as a win-win, possibly, if you want to continue that discussion.
We do offer the emergency or transfer of sick leave if somebody wants to donate to somebody for a specific reason.
Does anybody?
I believe last year that we talked about, there was a question about hiring, getting people hired in the police force here. And there was a question about, what can we do for new hires, so they come here, and there was a thing like a bonuses and.
Yeah,
and they'd have to pay- they'd have to
We just
pay
got
for
a new
training.
We talked about that last night at council during the work session, and we're going to do a residential, it's called a residential incentive program to assist employees in the purchase of a home, rather than just give them cash. It's more of a community building, in my mind anyway, community building project that will bring them to our community and have them invest in our community. So, but yes, we are doing that.
But the question I was gonna say, we talked about that last time, about getting people to come to St. Helens.
Right.
How would this negatively affect hiring in St. Helens? How would this affect
Well,
hiring
that,
in St. Helens?
I think you bring up a great point. If we don't offset this with something else like the residential thing, but this, you're talking just the police department, but I think what we're proposing here is this is citywide, so.
That's true.
But you're onto something here, because we at the police department face this issue where, as between Portland and the Oregon State Police, they're going to hire well over 100 officers this year, and they're looking for our brightest and our best. And so other agencies, other cities that are offering incentives and perks like this are tough to compete with. So currently, this puts us in a good spot in that it makes us look pretty good for the people who are looking long term, down the road, and that someday when I retire, or someday when I have 960 hours in the bank, it seems to me that our younger generations aren't thinking that far ahead, and they're thinking, what do I get today? How big is my paycheck on Friday? So I think a lot of us can agree that this is an incredible benefit that we give our people. But we just need to be careful, I think, about damaging, I don't know if that's the right word, but hurting our potential reputation in terms of benefits to employees. That's all. Just something to be thinking about.
Is there a bit?
I was gonna say that because I know at the county jail, they have a terrible time keeping people. I mean, they hire somebody, and then once they get they're trained and they are up to speed, they go somewhere else where they're getting paid $5,000 a year more. And it's just a big pass through.
That's
And so it's,
it's not a unique problem. It's going on all over the place in law enforcement,
Well, it's terrible, 'cause
corrections.
it takes us almost a year to get an officer on the road.
Is there a better way to show this liability so that it's not so impactful?
Yes.
Okay.
Capping it.
And I'm not sure if the person just getting trained and then going to a job that pays $5,000 more is somebody that's gonna be staying at one job for a long time anyway. And I know that people really do that anymore anyway. Like, they tend to move around a lot more than how it's not like, it didn't, it used to be you got a job and then you stayed there and you retired there, and people don't do that
I
anymore.
personally like the program. I mean, if these are people that have worked for the city for quite a while and are retiring, and.
It doesn't say retirement on this at all.
Sick leave, that's sick leave.
It says sick leave, but it.
It is sick leave when you retire.
So the rule right now is that you can't collect it until you retire?
But I'm
It
just.
says when they retire, right, the very first line.
Okay, thanks.
So to say if I were to leave
Thanks.
next year or something and go to another city, whatever sick leave that I have on the books would not be paid out because I'm not retiring from the city, I'm going to another city. So it's not a benefit that I would receive if I were.
I think Bill Eagle brought up a good point. He says $600,000. That's a good portion of our contingency it goes away in 4 years. So if we want to take a look at,
So then Pat did counter with that and said like some of these employees are in the, special district, or the, like what?
general fund and enterprise fund, there are two different,
And this is also assuming a worst-case scenario that every of those 15 employees had 960 hours. Not every employee may have 960 hours written.
Some of them have no hours in sick pay when they retire.
exactly.
One of the things the federal government does on this is that your sick leave is added to your time that you spend. For instance, if you worked, let's see, 22 years, if you have 2 years of sick leave, then it shows that you worked 24 years in your retirement based on that. And that's not a really major hit, but it's still helpful for the employee. And it's still an incentive not to just blow your sick leave.
That is usually standard with PERS, if this benefit didn't exist, was that their sick leave would be reported to PERS and then converted into the retirement account. Just a side note there.
So the question is,
It's not a cash check into your Viva that can be specifically spent on health-related expenses during that retirement or transition into whatever first retirement health benefit options you have during the period that comes up.
okay, so the recommendation,
Got it, end of the table there.
Hang
Oh,
on,
sorry.
Is this a negotiated benefit?
Yes.
Okay.
Between the police union and SSU.
Okay.
So,
And
It may be that you may recommend this to the council to look at, we go to the
We may
negotiation.
spend that 600 in attorney fees.
Well,
And you go to the unions and it may be a non-starter.
yeah, well,
Hours of contingency.
thank you.
so, do we have any more discussion?
the only recommendation I have is that almost, I don't know if any of the rest of the council knows all of our benefits or not. I happen to know because I've been involved in negotiations all the time, but I don't think the rest of the council, they probably need to have a list of all of our employees' benefits
It's generous.
so that they know. They have a lot of benefits. It's pretty amazing.
They do a good job negotiating.
Yeah, we do. We've been real nice to our employees.
one other thing, Matt, is you mentioned that you couldn't budget for this. But couldn't you do an estimated budget? I mean, you can go back over, the last 10 years and see about how many people.
Spreadsheet of what I have, is every employee that the city has, what their age is, when they were hired. when they
I
were
believe so,
potentially
yes.
retired, And it shows, based on 960 hours, how much that payout would be. That's a little personal information that I wouldn't want to share, but I do have that breakdown. Each year, how much it would be. That's where I came up with the $600,000 potentially in 4 years.
No, I mean that you could put that on a yearly budget, right? I mean, you could get an estimate for that.
It's
On an agent?
a pretty big amount, but yes, we could budget for it. If I do budget for it, it may impact services and personnel services and services, because that we budget for on an ongoing idea. So, say for instance, half of that 600,000 is for the general fund. Well, now that's $300,000 more than I have to budget for in the general fund. So, do we take sake of our reserves and drop that down to 15 or 10% to budget for this amount, or does that mean we have services in the general fund to help alleviate some of that difference?
But I'm saying you don't have to budget for worst-case scenario. You could look at the last 10 years and see about how many people leave and get some kind of an estimate, right? I mean, then you get something in there.
Yeah.
What's your churn?
I'm not 100% sure at this specific date.
Okay,
Not too terribly bad. For the most part, we do kind of hold on to the stories.
so if you work for the city, you retired from the city, so it's probably spread over time, it's probably pretty close.
With the general population of staff, I would say generally that is true.
Yeah.
We do have a lot of senior employees that have been here 10+ years.
Well, as Keith pointed out, Go
Brian,
ahead,
I'd
go
like
ahead.
to make a motion. this is more than just something that a bunch of lay people sitting around a table going to decide. I think they need to do a study on it and look at this very carefully. I mean, we're looking at a place where we're going to be losing a good portion of our contingency fund, where I think there may be some other ways to go about it, and I think you ought to be exploring that.
Does anybody want to have any further discussion about this at all?
I'll second that motion to, can you repeat that
My
motion?
motion is that we direct the council to hire a consultant to look at, to study this situation.
Could I tag on that it be a consultant that has human resource experience, and potentially from the League of Oregon Cities or their insurer?
Well,
I'd agree.
I will say that we look at this every year during negotiations because we compare our wages to other cities' wages our size, and so that's when all of this is brought together and compiled to compare with other cities. But I will say, though, that every year it gets a little convoluted because you never know are all the benefits put into that equation, and you never know if the other cities' benefits are put into the equation or not. So,
Well, and how do you know for cost of living versus cost of living? Because, you know, certain cities might be the same size as us, but housing might be twice as much, or it might be more expensive here than it's, say, in Eastern Oregon or something like that. And there's lots of factors.
Good point, and
we try to do
and I
comparable in the area.
I think that's to clarify Bill's motion. A consultant could clarify all of that for us, sort it out, give us tendencies of what's going on in other cities and other municipalities. I appreciate what Terry said about getting a kind of a bad reputation about what we're doing with our workers, but there was a point made that also that Terry made when he said younger people who come aboard hardly even look at that or hardly even care about it and until they get to 20, 25, 30 years down the line. I know that I gave all my sick leave away, and when I retired, and I had 30 years of sick leave accumulated, and I gave it away, and I was way ahead of all of that. There are people who will do that, and or give it to other people who need it. So I don't know. I favor capping at some time a 3 or 4 year period or a 2 year period or whatever. But man, after 30 years or 20 years, that's a lot of money. That if you're, what are we, 10 days of sick leave a year, by chance, here?
So my other question, Matt, was, is this calculated at their current wage or the wage that they will be when they retire? So it could actually be even more.
It's going to be more, right?
Yeah.
And I think, Brian, you made a good point about just when you're saying taking a sick day. I'm not sure if it's totally not a benefit to encourage them to use some of their sick time yet. Just because that temptation, if I'm saving that time, I'm definitely tempted to go to work.
But we definitely want to have some type of, enticement for people to come work for the city. We want qualified
Maybe,
people.
or something, or
A little
the
bit
consultant
around
idea
the
seems like a good idea.
administration here, and I know that when they're sick, they take sick time.
They're sick.
So that's just in this department though, administration, so I know that to be true.
Not so much.
Yeah.
We come in sick.
So,
It's the temptation for everybody.
Well,
It's always the temptation, let alone having a
Okay.
financial benefit.
If there's a budget committee meeting happening and you were sick yesterday and you're the financial Matt Brown.
He's here.
You're gonna be here, of course.
so we have Bill and Rachel.
We've all been there.
They've put together a motion
With a second.
with a second. Are we ready for the question?
Yes.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those not in favor say nay. Okay, we all agree to continue.
See, what we did is we just passed a really major problem and put it into council's pocket.
Well, we got a consultant in there too, so
But you,
And this is worst case scenario.
And
I mean, the wages are going up, but
where it
this
should have
is
been the first place.
everybody having that.
but now it's there.
You gave us direction.
Done.
You have 3 more
Next question.
opportunities.
Okay,
my demographic keeps the job for 3 years. My sick leave
Moving on
expires.
to the next topic, is the facilities maintenance manager position. This was something that I put into the opportunity list, as I saw a lot of the properties that the city is kind of now taking over, as far as purchasing, in addition to the waterfront, that's some additional properties, as well as continued maintenance that we're starting to see on our city facilities, like City Hall, the library, and then, as well as potentially in the coming years for new police facility, as well as, potentially parks maintenance programs, those kinds of things. So I put this position in, as an opportunity, potentially for a staff member to be fully dedicated to facility maintenance. This position specifically, would be part of Public Works, would not be part of city administration or anything like that. So it would be a team member from Public Works specifically dedicated to facility maintenance. And the reason they are dedicated to facility maintenance is because I can use some of the funds from the community development, fund to help pay for that position. Assuming that they are doing work specifically on that property. So this was, the recommendation from myself was for the budget committee to advise the city council to find the building maintenance utility worker to a facilities maintenance manager or worker, so that that person would specifically be for facility maintenance. So if anything were to come up or need to be worked on or planned or managed or, projects that happen with City Hall that may take more than 1 day or so, that staff would have someone specifically to contact and manage those, projects.
can I ask the dumbest question in the entire world?
Yes,
Why isn't this already in place?
we technically do have it in place, and Sue can probably chime into to how much time, our current person that would do this, which is Roger. He currently is in our Public Works Department and is the building maintenance utility worker. But does a lot of time as well as doing public work projects, as well as working on the streets, and doing street signs and additional street work.
Mhm.
Sue, did you want to talk about some of the responsibilities that Roger does kind of on both sides?
On both sides, yeah, he oversees when there's repair work. He goes to any of the city buildings. He's done work at the police department. He's done a lot of work at the library. He helps cost out things for them, getting quotes for painting for the library, etc. Carpeting, any sort of upgrades and repairs on any of the city buildings. But he's based out of Public Works. He enjoys being out of Public Works. His basic job description, as Matt mentioned, covers a lot of other responsibilities, specifically the signs, like we were talking about, doing some of the sign upgrades. He's in charge of those types of programs as well. The street, not the long line stripings, the center line stripings, but all of the crosswalks, the legends, the turn arrows, the school slow torch downs, all of the parking stalls. He paints all of those every year, the yellows along the curbs and all of that. That's all part of what Roger's day-to-day responsibilities are. And he enjoys that. That's what he wants to do. He also is more than happy because of his background, very long background in building, carpentry. So that's in his job description, is having those carpentry skills in order to help either facilitate or actually perform a lot of the maintenance and some of the improvements at any of the city buildings that we have.
Sue, if we get ourselves a facility maintenance czar, how would we pay for it?
That you'd have to ask Matt.
So it would still be paid for some of what it's paid like for in public works.
Is that taking away from another public works position?
Well, it's potentially impacting public works.
Mm-hmm.
Like Stu mentioned, he does do a lot of street maintenance work as far as street signage and striping. So it potentially could impact public works if they were to do that position. That would be up to the director of public works if the council were to approve this position.
So if Roger was promoted to the facilities maintenance manager position, if he was promoted to that, then are we looking then to get him an assistant, in a sense, to do the mediocre kind of carpentry and those kinds of things that he could oversee?
That's essentially what he's doing now. Is that he will oversee some of public works staff that come in to help him do that.
Got it?
This would just be kind of reorganization as far as being able to fund that position from types like the community development fund for the property management aspect of those potential additions.
Be nice to have a point person.
So,
I've got a question on, okay.
Susan had her.
Oh, sorry. Can't
It's
see.
okay. Why would we build a position around a person who may or may not want to do that?
Because of the need?
But
Well, you're just
would
talking-
that not be an open position?
To be honest, I've gotten different responses.
I just wondered if it would be an open position for someone else to apply for if they wanted it, or if it is designed just for a single person.
Potentially do that. One way to fund a specific position like this is we do have facility maintenance in every one of our expenses.
Uh-huh.
One of the ways to help fund a position, if we were to open it up to external or internal posting, is to fund a little bit from each department to help pay for that position as a whole for our department. That is one avenue.
So you're suggesting that we would not add to the budget, we just take away from different departments?
Reapportioning?
Reappropriate is more appropriate.
I would like to ask
Appropriate.
a question. I want to understand what Roger does. Now, if he goes to the library or to the police department to look at something, is he being called to go there, or is he somebody who goes through these buildings and examines things and determines where maintenance needs to be done?
Right now, it's my understanding is that staff calls Public Works and their admin assistant Sherry to let Roger know to come over and when something is fixed or when it needs to be repaired.
So consequently, these other places have a maintenance person that understands the building and what maintenance has to be done. Like the library has a maintenance person that's going through the building and saying, you know, we have a problem here.
No.
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 So that's the problem that I see, is that you've got places that don't have a person that's qualified to know what the maintenance is until it's maybe too late. Maybe somebody's already, you know, water's coming out of the wall or something like that.
Okay.
They said, oh, somebody should have looked at that thing 2 or 3 years ago and replaced that pipe.
That would be part of the specific job description, job dedicated to building systems.
So he would be, he
Keep
or
it-
she would be the person that goes and determines what kind of maintenance needs to be done.
On all buildings. He'd be the expert, or she.
So, I know that Roger is very capable of doing all these things. He owned his own business for a lot of years, doing construction. Sometimes you don't wanna think, you just wanna go grab a flat shovel and you wanna scrape sidewalks and paint them, because it's actually a break from your day-to-day grind. And it seems to be working right now. I mean, it does. He's actually getting ready to put a egress door for Margaret over at the library and looking at the windows. So those projects are getting fulfilled, right? I mean, they're not being neglected. So,
Sounds like a valuable person. I'd
Oh, he is.
retain him. I certainly want to keep him.
absolutely. We all agree that he is, we all like Roger, so, yes.
There are also some specific tasks that maybe may not be able to do because he doesn't have
Because it requires a tradesperson to do it.
That Roger could potentially do that if he had it for some time. So as we look at remodeling the front areas, we look at possibly redoing or building a court library down the road, those kind of projects that could be maintained and facilitated in that way. Having somebody that could do those projects, or at least know how to talk to contractors about those projects to get it done.
But clearly, him doing some of these jobs is maybe not, we'd be paying him too much to do them. It might be better to have someone else do that work. Okay.
And I think he's very fair in making that call and making those
Yes.
calls.
Sure.
And I want to know is what's your anticipated idea of the financial impact that this could have? And in your last sentence there, it's ambiguous to me of if there is going to be a financial impact or not. Is there? Can you just discuss that just very briefly so we all know?
So right now, the position is a union position. So creating a new position would be meaning that the city council and public works or administration work on a job description, send it to the union for approval with a proposed salary. What that is, or what it could be, maybe higher than what he is paid now. So that is the financial impact that I'm talking about over there. The other financial impact is something that Bill mentioned earlier about taking from other funds to help fund the position.
Okay, thank you.
Keith had his hand up for a while.
Keith?
So, would this position take over the jobs that I've been doing over at the mill and whatnot?
That would be the goal and anticipation potentially of the job descriptions.
Then Roger would never do work again for the rest of his life. You need a different person for that job.
Keith, that would be you, yeah.
Well, I could contract out, I guess. Might get paid more than I'm getting paid now.
Yes, Rachel, sorry.
Well, I'll butt in there. So, I see this as directly related, if not a symptom of the next issue, where we need a review of the public works job descriptions and the structure of the departments.
I think we're making a big issue out of something that may not really be an issue. The overall budget, the amount of money, even if he gets a substantial raise, it's not gonna impact, be a terrible impact on the budget.
Well,
No.
and here's my concern, you know, we've identified a place where the city needs to provide quality, effective, and efficient service. This is the mission, right? So either we look at our existing resources, which is what I believe this is a proposal to do within public works, or we create a new position. I'm not hearing that this is a new position. I hear that a lot of these duties are covered by the talented staff that are there. And I think a good review of that department structure, we may be able to find that a facilities maintenance manager position is needed and would fit into the structure. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Or maybe it's a little bit premature because some of these properties aren't being redone quite yet.
Right. Or we need to, you know, look
Somebody
at
just needs
see
to
what
second her.
resources we have.
We also
I
don't
agree.
want to lose a valuable employee
No.
because trying to change, if we take some of these job duties away from that current position, the person that's in that position right now may not be happy in that position any longer.
Right. It should be an open recruitment, that would be my assertion.
We need this position, but we don't want to move Roger into it because like I say, it's, with the mill, it's a full-time job over there.
Well, people you're talking more about is a project manager for that, which is our St. Helens.
Well, that's
Industrial
kind of what
Park,
was in that job
which is our
description.
St. Helens Industrial Park, and also probably, that and various different things that could be going on with the urban renewal.
Exactly.
Because I don't think, you know, I mean, when the urban renewal kicks off, you there could be multiple projects going on at once that, maybe we need that other person there for the oversight of other projects too.
So, if we're gonna grow as a city, how are we gonna get there? I think you've identified two more positions. The question is, how do we fund them?
Well, I think one more position is what, and that would be a year out probably. I mean, realistically. I know you got one project going over there right now, but it's about a year out.
Yeah.
I'm leaving in how many months?
You're so enthusiastic about it,
It'll
too.
still keep moving forward, I can promise you that, okay?
But it could be moving forward a lot faster than it is.
Well, could I?
Welcome to government. Remember when you told me that, Steve?
Can I ask a question about it? So does Public Works think that this position is needing to be filled right now?
No,
I mean, because you would know best, right?
no, they don't.
And they don't believe that
No.
this position needs to happen?
Not from the staff and the management that I've talked to, no.
I think, my personal opinion is just, I think it's premature. I think that we're just not in this place right now, and I think it might be a little bit off of the purview of the budget committee to make staffing recommendations. I think down the road, I mean, things that this budget committee doesn't know is that during lean times that hierarchy was changed, and maybe we need to relook at that, but that's not part of the budget committee's job.
You could put a pin in it and discuss. it
Yeah,
and
it's not
continue.
part of the
Well, I'd
budget
love to
committee's
see-
job. We don't need to beat this thing till we're senseless.
Yeah,
I
love to
think
see-
that it's a good thing to keep kinda in the parking lot for council, that we need to be looking at this every year and see, is it time to go back and look at that again? You know, and just with retirements in mind and different things, it's like, is this a good time to relay this out and make it make sense for the future? Rather than tailor-made a job to an individual that may or may not stay here seems really premature and out of left field.
Right,
That's
but
just my opinion.
I'd like to see the review happen first, that structural review of all of those job descriptions, how they function within the city, how do we deliver services.
There's lots of stuff changing right now with the purchase of the property, and it all has to be part of the conversation.
So I think, are we jumping ahead like Rachel's suggesting?
Yeah.
That's what we're going with this.
Well, I just don't think that it's in our purview, or that we can make an informed decision in that until the department is, you know.
You're absolutely right on that. It shouldn't even have been on the list, so let's keep going.
Well, okay, so we can move to, I will make a motion that number 15, the facilities maintenance manager position, is removed from consideration at this time by the budget committee.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Nay. Motion carries.
Okay, number 16. So this is the Public Works Job Duties and Responsibilities Review. So this is a opportunity for a general overview of the Public Works structure, job reviews, and responsibilities. Our city county insurance does kind of a unofficial audit every year of asking us to go through and see and give requests and suggestions to the cities to encourage to review job descriptions on a yearly basis and during the annual review process. For Public Works, most job descriptions have not been changed since 2007, and that's from the city recorder. With the ever-changing technology needs and positions as they kind of grow, I write that the city should probably review on a regular basis to ensure that the job descriptions are current with what each job and each person actually does on a daily basis. So it may be beneficial to review those union and non-union positions to see if the current structure and responsibilities fit today's times. So my recommendation for the budget committee was to advise the city council to review the Public Works job structure, duties, and responsibilities in the Public Works Department, along with the overall structure of the department, to ensure that the public funds are used in the most effective and efficient way to achieve the city's goals. The reason I wrote that specifically is because of the way our sewer and
move to accept this recommendation.
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
I have a question.
Oh, what would that question be?
I'd like to ask Sue what the issue would be of doing this and how it would affect your department specifically in its operation or its goals.
It'd be hard to say because I don't know what the outcome of this would be. I do know, I think that there have been changes since 2007. We look at what all of the employees do every year, especially when we come to budget time. We look at everybody's duties, and we have changed job descriptions. We've added new job descriptions and moved employees into those new job descriptions because the bulk of their tasks have changed throughout a period of time. So we've done that systematically. Now have the job descriptions for the utility workers changed, maybe not the basic job descriptions, because the basic duties that they do out there don't change. They do this same things. They work on the water lines, they fix the sewer lines, they put in water meters, they put in new catch basins. These are things that don't change. But we do move people. We have changed and added new job descriptions over the past several years. So I do think we keep it as current as we can. I do know the last time that they did one of these studies, it created terrible feelings within the Public Works staff. They were very resentful of the results of it. The morale just took an absolute nosedive, and it's taken us years to bring that back up to where the employees are feeling more positive about the city. We don't have nearly as many negative attitudes out there as we did some years past.
Basically, we lost our city administrator because of that, because of the outfall of that, and because
there
the
were-
Public Works staff, employees and that crew
There were
was
extremely-
so
yes.
divided
Yes.
Amongst the administration and Public Works. My question is, will this help you, in a sense, in your position, to get council confidence behind what your decisions are and behind what you have done thus far?
It could potentially, yeah.
I see that.
Sue,
Yeah,
I
but-
did have a question. Couldn't you arrange it so that the employees themselves would have input into this?
Oh, they did have input into the last one.
I was thinking if they had input into it.
They absolutely had
there
input
would
into
be
the
less
last
bad
one.
feeling about it.
No, they had input into the last one.
But it wasn't necessarily it was the outcome that really got them upset.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think so.
So what did we learn? My question is, what did we learn from the outcome?
Come out with it, tell them what the outcome was.
That the city administrator got a big raise and nobody else did.
Yeah, that
So-
was the basis of it.
I don't,
and-
I don't,
And that,
all,
yeah, and it said that, yeah.
Let Sue finish. Sue
no,
can answer
I'm
that.
just- hang on a second. It doesn't say anything on there about John getting a raise out of here. All it's saying is they're gonna review the job descriptions.
Their last report.
That's-
It's called the Jensen, am I correct?
Yeah, but it was a citywide one though, yes.
Yeah, it was
It
citywide.
was a citywide one, yeah.
Go way back.
So
Sorry, go ahead,
2000.
Rachel.
Could I recommend that all departments review their job structures, duties, and responsibilities?
Yeah, that's one, 'cause why is it just started?
I think it's a healthy thing for any entity to periodically
Absolutely.
look at what everybody's doing and make sure the job descriptions match.
Well, here, it's not only the department, but the recommendation up there is to bring it to council and let council look at it as well.
Right.
Now, last time, we didn't have that openness when our city administrator took it right to Public Works and right back again, and never brought it to council to mull over it or even look at it. It was just a done deal, and then all of a sudden we had a Public Works revolt.
So he
It-
took,
Yes.
he took it, basically, he took it out of process
Exactly.
and decided, and this doesn't,
No, this brings
Okay.
it back into council, and I think it's a good thing that if we do that, these things come back to council so that we know.
did you want to restate your motion?
I made the motion.
Okay,
All I did was take a recommendation. The way
All right.
I read it is all we do is
Keith made the
we
motion.
talk
Okay.
about it. That's what I'm reading
All right.
there is the city council talks about it. So, hey, that's a good idea.
I have some discussion on this. I just think it would be a good process if it was open between the council and Public Works, and we also relook at this because of the urban renewal that is gonna be happening. This city is gonna change more than even I think anticipate. We know, but $42 million urban renewal is gonna be dumped into this town.
okay.
I think it actually, and plus whatever is in the general fund from year to year, yeah, that's a big chunk of change.
Okay.
So I think now might be the time, just to start relooking at that, you know, I know that there's,
It's already been voted and approved, right?
Oh, yeah, that's right, it has, sorry. Next question.
Okay. We have till
well,
8:15.
so did it actually get approved?
Yeah.
Yeah, we voted.
We gotta make a motion to come out of the question.
Yep,
Yeah, I heard a motion in a second.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought we voted.
and I voted too, I
And
said,
then we questioned it,
Yep.
had a discussion,
Yep.
and we gotta come out of the discussion for a vote.
Yes,
Again,
so you have to.
okay, so,
you're right.
During the question, you should've went to let it be open
okay, sorry,
and went really fast,
yep.
so.
Revote.
You wanna,
Make a motion, we come out with a question.
Second.
All
all in favor?
all those in favor?
I
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, now we make there's been a motion on the floor, right?
Th- Yes,
And it was seconded by who?
Bill.
Bill?
All those in favor on voting on the motion that Keith made, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion carries.
So as we get started on this last topic, I just want to remind the budget committee that we have 10 minutes until the public forum officially starts, the public hearing.
It's a form of government.
Until the public hearing officially starts the meeting. So, we have about 10 minutes to discuss and if there's any decision or motion made, on this last opportunity, which is the council administrator and council manager forum.
My recommendation, or my motion is to just take this thing off of the agenda.
I'll second that.
I'll second that.
I have a question first. Well, not first, but.
Can you call the question?
No. My question is, I feel like I was informed of a charter review committee made up of volunteers and counselors within the past 5
That would have been 11 years ago.
11 years ago.
Before I was on council.
No, it wasn't that long ago, was it?
Yes, it was.
Council.
11,
Right, it was.
it was 11 years ago, and then the vote went to the people,
Okay.
and the people upheld the original charter by a 70% margin, 74% margin. So this would mean if we went down this list and wanted to change back to a manager form, we could do that maybe internally a bit through our governing policy, which we kind of do now with a kind of a hybrid sense of allowing our department heads to run our departments.
Right.
We do that. It's just that's the way we operate.
Yeah.
And so nobody, I know Chief Salee had this problem. He says, you know, the way I interpret this is that the council person over the police department can move into my office, wear a coat and tie, and come in and take it over. Is that going to happen? And we said absolutely not, because our governing policy is set up to where it just isn't run that way, and we all have an understanding of that.
It's kind of a three-headed beast.
You're right.
The head of the department, the liaison, and then the administrator.
So it's 2 staff people and a council person make emergency decisions for each department. So if this goes forward and we want to go to a city manager form, we're going to have to take to a vote of the people. We're going to have to form a huge committee to do research, and that committee should then give the council a recommendation, which they did last time. And then we took it to the vote of the people, and that's where it was. It was a long, drawn-out process.
And there
Well,
is financial impact to it.
We did actually go back and change the charter, and without the city administrator or city manager, and then so that has been voted in since then.
And there's a lot of history here, and I don't know what it is. I was wondering how recently that charter review committee had happened, what the findings were, the minutes, if those are accessible to us.
The
on this
community
committee.
rejected manager overwhelmingly hostily.
Because
People
of the
were
financial impact,
angry.
because it
That
costs a
was-
lot of money to hire.
No.
Because he gave himself a
It was
raise.
very
Personally
personally
correct. It was a perception
It was
of
a
lack of
personal
transparency.
issue.
Yeah, so the way I understand it right now, the council is doing all of the work, and they would be able to give some of their work to another person. But it's not the council members asking for this? I mean, is it that the work is too much and that's why this is on here? Why is this?
No, it just, the way that would work would put more, make him a manager, which would give him more responsibilities and more authority just to do
Right.
the day-to-day operations without
And you
checking
guys less
in,
day-to-day.
the three-headed, yes.
Right.
How does communication work today? Can somebody give me an example?
So I always go to him because it's standard, that's the way it works in government. You go through your administrator, I'm pretty sure everybody does. That's the way it's supposed to happen. And of course, I'm in administration, but if I was over Terry, and I would come to John, or meet with John and Terry, if I seen something, or Terry said, hey, we need to, got some stuff going on, we'd come down and we'd discuss it, and we'd come up with the best decision between the three of us that we can make at that point in time.
And is there good communication between the leadership team? How often
There
does
is.
that
I
team
mean, I think it
meet?
works pretty well, and I don't think there is a perfect system. There,
No.
to the extent your council goals have adopted, in some models, ideally you have the policy board acting as a unit, and they're advising the administration on that. And, PATH is a little more complex than having this hourglass and that kind of.
Right.
And the city manager is pretty popular in Oregon.
How often do all the heads get together and talk together in the same room?
The way it's
I'm just referring to the
You guys have staff meeting every week, right?
departmentalized and closed off to, in a sense of,
Every other Tuesday?
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
The Tuesday before council.
Exactly.
But then there's the interaction between the council liaison and the department person itself that happens
Often.
on a continuous wheel.
So, wouldn't it be better just to have, as Rick described, wouldn't it be better to have, when those meetings happen, that the council member, you, and the other department head are present to have that meeting, or is it just not conducive sometimes?
It depends on how you write your new charter. And there are different, there's so many different types of city charter. The way the old system, when I say old system, the proposed system was that meant that Doug could not go down and talk to a council head, or Keith could not talk to the police chief. You couldn't talk to them direct. This is strictly the city manager. You have to go through the city manager. That's exactly how that type of system works. But there are different, there are different ones. There are dozens of different types.
Depends on the manager. It all depends on the
Yeah,
manager.
like, I've popped in to talk to Terry plenty of, I think 2 or 3 times. One time I was just there talking to Joe, Lieutenant Hope. I stopped in and talked to Public Works on break.
Maybe you guys would like to talk to us less.
I like seeing a working city council. I like seeing you guys working your heads off. It really makes me feel good to know that you guys are involved. You're hands-on.
The one thing the reason, we went down the path was because it gives us insight into what's really going on. Most city councils, they go into a meeting, a city council meeting, and they vote on stuff, and they have no idea what they're voting on. All they're doing is getting the recommendation of who's ever presenting that, a thing, where
So
we know what our,
So you're the expert in the room on what's going on in that department.
well,
yes,
yeah,
he should
we're
know
up on it,
about
yeah.
Absolutely, yes.
So Brian, I think the caveat in all of this is that we have to write our department head evaluations. And so when we write an evaluation on our department head, we damn well better know what we're talking about, because it's their job. It's their life profession. And to have someone come in and just by the seat of their pants write down some kinds of things that don't make sense to them without that council person knowing and being involved in what's going on is what I think is what Keith is trying to say. They don't know it's hard. It's a good accountability factor.
I'm just saying, the way this is written, it just sounds like there's not enough communication, that's all.
I heard it opposite. The people that are working on all of this, I'm getting that it's working.
It
Is that
says,
what I'm
all I'm reading, oftentimes with city council, administration, form of government, objectives and goals become more departmentalized and closed off, or a sense to other departments. I'm just want everybody making sure that we're all on the same team, talking to each other.
I would actually like to change that if we could, to being that, switching every year, that we change department heads, or have the ability to.
We do need to change. The last several years, we haven't changed as much as we should. Absolutely.
We didn't have a lot of stability, I think that's why.
Yeah.
We had a lot of
Because I
changes.
think everybody should be familiar with the in and outs of how the city works. I think it's work.
No, I think that's invaluable.
I think, you know,
I'm probably the only one here that's been to over each department. Yeah, no, I am.
Wait a minute, because I see John kind of as kind of the quarterback, you know, he's
Of
keeping us all
course.
in
He is,
line.
yes.
And I think all of us who talk to John say we'd like you to act more like a city manager and respond more like a city manager. However, that pulls the carpet out from underneath our police chief, our department head with Public Works, our librarian,
Why?
and people who are
Why?
department heads,
he can
because
tell
they
them what to do.
collaboratively work together, and he is our administrator, and they do lean to him for, and you do run the meetings, I do believe, that your staff meetings.
HR and finance, there's overlaps.
Yeah.
There's good examples of city administrator forms, and then there's good examples, and there's bad examples, and there's, similarly with the city manager form, you just accept it, and that's all.
We have,
I'm sorry.
we have two cities
Public hearing.
that are home rule cities.
We're out of time.
And
Committee.
We have Scappoose and we have Plaquemine. And those two are true home rule cities in Connecticut.
We're out of time.
Public hearing.
Public hearing. I don't believe that I have ever opened up a public hearing. Keith, you want to walk me through this?
Just bang gavel and say we're in a public hearing.
Okay,
public hearings open.
Yeah.
under the assistance of Keith Locke, this meeting, this public hearing is open.
Well, here you go, the script's right there, it's right on the agenda.
Yep.
No, to accept shared revenue for, yeah, there you go.
The purpose is for the Budget Committee to discuss the use of state shared revenue received by the City of St. Helens.
So this is the chance for anybody from the public to weigh in on how those revenue sharing items are specifically used for the city. Those are specifically the cigarette tax, revenue sharing, and the alcohol tax that we receive from the city.
Not our marijuana tax?
That's separate.
Not yet.
How much is that this year?
Which?
I think you're at 30,000,
Revenue
Should be
sharing
more
is
than that.
30?
33,000 maybe.
Cannabis, yeah, 33.
The cannabis one?
No.
No, we're
the-
revenue
the-
share.
Total.
Revenue
No,
share.
The state share revenue.
Cigarette tax is 17,000, alcohol tax is,
$244,000. So we have more people drinking than smoking.
and the revenue sharing is the 142.
Oh, okay.
So
That's, yeah, that's about what it normally is. It's gone up a little bit.
Yeah, it goes up and down depending on the trends of
So,
general cigarette taxes starting
just
to go
for,
down.
for history, I'm gonna say 8, 9 years ago, we used to have all the different organizations come in and ask for money, and then we shared this money with all those organizations. When the economy started going down the tube and we were, the first few years we did okay, but as our contingency started withering, the council voted that this would go into our general fund instead of sharing it with the community. So that's kind of still where we're at. Is the last several years we've just put it back in the general fund to help run the city because we've been so short of money. So that's the situation. That's where we're at.
Did you have a comment?
Do we have any public comment?
Well, so that was gonna be my comment, is I remember that there used to be, because we showed up. Yeah,
Yeah.
You've been here too?
Okay, may the record show that we had no one show up from the public to comment.
Working on really great things.
Don't discount Claudia.
Oh, sorry.
I wanted,
Claudia, ask for money for the Kiwanis Club. Oh.
I mean, I just had a comment.
Sorry, go ahead, Jenny.
I'm not a public comment, but I have a comment about revenue sharing. It's been in the general fund since I was elected, and I understand when we were making the decision every year whether people were gonna keep their jobs, it made sense for it to be there. And I'm not advocating that it not be in the general fund, but I am advocating that the budget committee make the recommendation to the council to take a harder look at charitable contributions and possibly a public grant program to sponsor good ideas, and good programs in our community. We've had many people come in here and want stuff, and I feel like we're turning a cold shoulder.
That's a wonderful idea.
I'll second.
I think there needs to be somewhere in between, all or nothing.
Well, it isn't nothing though, because when we did move those resources into the general fund, we also bolstered the council's discretionary funds. So they pay more.
We still give some monies away, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are those for like black ops operations?
Oh,
What are they?
just different things, different people come in and
I don't know.
different wants and needs and whatnot.
I mean,
So we look at
I
it.
mean, to clarify, I mean, not a lot of people know that they can come in here to council and plead their case and get money throughout the year. Not a lot of organizations know they can do that. If they know one of us, they'll ask us and they'll do that. But I think that there's ways throughout the year that we can do outreach, whether it be with Alano Club or whether it's a Monty Center or whatever, when the city's doing an event, that we can do better use of a little bit of money here and there to take care of those less fortunate.
But we
in our
have done
community.
that. We've given money to the Alano Club and we've given money to the Garden Club.
There was
We've
testimony
given-
in our meeting in the last 2 weeks about people that feel marginalized, and that's the statement. I just want it on the public record as we move that money into the general fund, just putting it out there. Cause we all hear it every day, and not everybody will come in here hat in hand and ask for money. Not everybody will, and maybe council can be more aware of those opportunities and bringing them back. And not, cause lots of people won't. They're too proud, they won't ask.
We've had individuals come in too.
I've
Oh.
been here,
Support
Susan.
things. Yeah, I know. I'm
Yeah.
just saying,
What-
we have done that.
When we had the program, we used to send out letters, and I'll tell you, there was no shortage of people coming in asking for
Right.
money.
Yeah.
And it was a dogfight.
Yes.
It really was.
They were only talking about the process,
Right.
Yeah.
having that outreach to do it or not.
Yeah,
Right now, it's pretty reactive, maybe proactive.
right.
But we have more limited funds than we did then too. So,
We allocated less to discretionary funds. You could move more funds to the council discretionary fund and have a little bit more of a program. But
So
that was pretty bad.
I think that, with the taxes that we definitely will keep that in mind, especially if one of those organizations approaches us. Alano Club or,
pretty small.
The Monty Center that does the at-risk kids.
Yeah.
The CASA, the Court of Point of Special Advocates.
Keep that in mind.
Yeah, I mean, you
Any
know
more
our network.
discussion pertaining to this? Any more discussion that we want to talk about this anymore? I leave it up to
Jesse
you.
made a motion.
Yeah.
I just wanted it on the record. I wanted this budget committee, because
make a
they're
motion?
not here all year long
don't
when
think so.
people come in and make their
She wanted-
plea.
yeah,
I want
statement for
to
public
see,
record.
you know, if they're like, yeah, sure, whatever, or if it's important to them.
But we do have it set up where we can give that, we, like, me and Rachel side top, I mean, you know,
Right.
we did the, community action, the,
Right.
10,000,
That's right,
yeah.
yeah.
It's 10,000, is that
Well,
what I read?
and would it be
Yeah.
useful
10,000
for
discretionary.
us to make a motion to have council look at the amount of their discretionary fund and appropriate uses thereof?
But you have to make a motion to receive the state shared revenue for the general, whatever fund use you want to use
Well,
it.
I need to bump that number up then a little bit, if you guys are really wanting to go there.
We've only got 1.2 million right now in discretionary
Well-
funds.
How much?
1.2 million.
Oh.
So,
It's fully about an
This is a public hearing.
Right,
So-
that's all it is.
I will make that motion to receive state shared revenue for fiscal year 2018.
I'll second that.
Carrot, second.
Awesome.
All
More
in favor?
discussion?
Any more discussion? Any? Okay. Those in favor to approve the motion, please state aye. Aye. Those opposed, please state nay. Motion carries forward. I close the public hearing.
Bill says we have $1.2 million in our
Just say you have a 1 million contingency and you have 1.2 million discretionary, according to this, unless I'm reading it wrong.
And you
So, to finish up in the last 5 minutes, we still have 2 things to do on the agenda, which is to approve the tax rate.
Oh, can I do that? I'd like to make a motion that the city, that we charge 1.9078 per $1,000 of assessed value for general fund property taxes, for taxes levied by the city's permanent rate.
Second, can I second?
Is there any discussion?
Yeah, can we change it to $5?
No,
No,
you
we
can't.
can't.
That's
I've
the
got a
maximum
question.
you can charge.
Is this,
the maximum you can charge.
just a
Yeah.
question, is this the maximum?
Yeah.
This is it.
It's been fixed since
We're fixed
Proposition
there.
5.
That's why
That's why we're
No,
screwed.
no, you could put it lower.
This is why we're in the state of economy that we are
That's
right
right, that's right, yeah.
Motion and a second.
now. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Motion carries forward.
This doesn't seem right that Scappoose gets $264 per, $200,000 more than we do.
Next item.
Next item. Approval for proposed 2018-2019 budget.
So if somebody wants to read the motion, it is, written on the agenda.
What? No, repeat that.
Okay,
We need-
I'll read it.
I don't want.
Move to
Yes.
approve expenditures, I can my glasses on, for fiscal year 2018-19 in the amount of $40,366,730, and to establish the maximum expenditures for each fund as shown on FY 2018-2019 proposed budget expenditure summary by fund.
Second.
Okay, this is the opportunity for changes to the proposed budget to be introduced. If changes are suggested, you need a motion and a second, followed by a discussion and a vote on that change motion only. Anything? Do we move forward? Okay.
Well, the one thing that I would like to do is what I'd like to see in our parks is that we start to move forward with a parks initiative, and we don't leave this room until that's done. So that's how I feel.
I feel
That's
being-
just now let me finish, okay?
I'm feeling hostage.
Okay. Go ahead then.
No, I'm just simply saying, we're not going to leave until what? What do you want?
I'm just saying, I would like that initiative to be talked about and looked at. So I'm dissatisfied with it at this point, and I will probably yield a no vote. So that's, if I do, that's why. Because we haven't taken a good look at it.
What initiative?
What, yeah.
Yeah, what?
You're talking about put a bond out for the parks.
Yes.
And I suggested that weeks ago, so.
Let's put a
why-
bond-
Why don't,
I
why
think
don't you,
that's a
why don't
Would
you
you move-
move that to our next council
Yeah, that's a
session
separate issue.
instead of tonight, so that we can get out of here?
Yeah, and I'd also like to see the wrap up and report out from the activities program, the collaborative between St. Helens District and the city. You know, not whenever, I know that it's a work in progress.
Right.
But as that progresses, I definitely want follow-up and I wanna get excited about it and see, because I feel like the activities and the parks.
We have a tentative brochure, if you'd like to see it.
Is it-
I know, I do.
But,
It will be released on Friday.
Okay.
okay. Is there language for that bond that you're thinking about?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, then we can't really vote on it then.
No, absolutely not.
So,
Okay.
I just like to make one comment that Doug, you're not alone in that, and I think that, we are kind of going that direction a little bit with I think with the open forum. I have actually reached out to Matt last March about a bond. In 5 years, you can do a operational and, equipment. A 10-year can only be equipment. Okay, I've looked at, $100 per year. We ran a bunch of numbers, didn't we, Matt? So, it's definitely been something that I'm passionate about, and, I think a lot of citizens are, but I think we'll find out once we get this Parks and Rec going.
To me, it's either a bond or a special district. And I'd really like to see us spend some time on a special district, but I'm hearing nothing from the Budget Committee.
Could I?
And that's what I would like to hear from. I'd like to hear from this Budget Committee to go in that direction or whatever, because otherwise, we're just spinning our wheels up with the
So-
council.
I
We need
So,
some
hang on, hang on.
direction.
I agree. We've been talking about it for some time, and we're going to have partners this time in doing a special district. We'll have the school district, so I think that we're gonna have a better chance of passing it than we.
Is the Budget Committee giving us direction to go that way? Giving us a recommendation,
What-
like you're giving us recommendations on public works of redefining people's jobs and that kind of thing? What kind of recommendation is this Budget Committee giving to the council to look at parks?
So one of the things that we looked at, we're reviewing the proposals. There's a recommendation and what to do to move forward. I don't see that, what you're asking, presented to the Budget Committee in that format.
Okay.
You're asking for us to magically have this language produced with a recommendation. It should have followed the format that we've been proceed with before with the 21 items that we had. It should have been on there. And then we could have looked at it, we could have all discussed it, and then it would have gotten,
Right.
I don't know, maybe forward-looking statement, but probably approved
Can it
to
kinda
move
be
forward, to
grouped
move to the
with
council.
The $2, like we were talking about the $2, can it kind of, because it's one or the other, one and the other is what's being, so can it kind of to some
Well,
degree
one would be introductory and the other
and
not,
the other
and
would be
replace
maybe
it
more of a
down the
permanent.
road.
So there's a public meeting that's gonna be held about the one. Should that be part of that discussion then? Can we
Can
say
we make a motion
that
now?
should be part of the discussion when the public meeting is discussing
It's gonna be
this?
the reason for holding it.
Nobody has to do anything. I'm just airing my opinion. That's
Well,
all.
it just happens to be a really good opinion. It looks like the public wants to move forward to go with parks and they want to spend some money.
I think
So-
Doug was talking about two different options.
Yeah.
And what the Budget Committee feels on those options.
But we can have really, really great parks if we do a combination of both tools.
Good.
Can I recommend that we have a really solid strategic plan in place first?
Sure.
Thank you.
Any more discussion?
Yeah, what about a bond for a police station?
Woo!
Don't get Terry started.
Are you just stirring the pot, or
If we are, hey, check this out. If we are our own, if we become a special district, then parks is alleviated from the city, thus allowing police to have the lion's share of what was allocated for parks. So, yes, they would win if we went out on a special district. It wouldn't, it would.
Helps everybody.
It would build our other
Helps
departments.
But
everything.
somebody's retiring and going to Salem, so.
Anyways, moving on.
Okay,
Couple people retiring and going to Salem.
Yeah.
okay. Is there anything further that we need to discuss? I would like to close this budget committee meeting.
Well, you have a motion and a second still.
Oh, gosh, dang it.
We do?
Yes, we then have
second
more
on what?
discussion.
Second on what?
Oh, right. That's right.
Okay. It says but no vote, so how do we vote?
Down, number 3, it says vote on the motion.
No.
We're not making any changes.
Yeah, we
Okay.
haven't made any changes.
Number 3 says vote on the motion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Read the top, and say all in favor.
All in favor?
Now, read the top. Move to approve.
Move to approve the expenditures for fiscal year 2018-19 in the amount of $40 million, man, that's hard to say, $366,730, and to establish the maximum expenditures for each fund as shown on fiscal year 2018 and 19 proposed budget expenditure summary by fund. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Motion carries forward. We did it. We're done. Turn off the cameras.
Doug, you just like saying nay at these meetings.
You know what? This
Didn't
was-
get my way.